Parshat Lech. We're following Avram Avinu's journey, starting in Haran, ending up near Shechem in Eretz Yisrael, Eretz Canaan, as it was then known. And there's a pasuk which expresses Avram Avinu's joy as he arrives. Vayira Hashem el Avram, vayomer lezaracha eten et haaretz azot, vayiven sham mizbeach laHashem hanireh alav. So we see Avram Avinu clearly wants to express his hakaras hatov. He's building a mizbeach to Hashem, but the question is why? Why did he build that mizbeach? And here Rashi and the Ramban have two different interpretations. Rashi says, well, Avram Avinu wasn't sure that the promise, ve'escha lagoy gadol, was necessarily going to be fulfilled until he reached Eretz Yisrael, because Hashem had made one dependent on the other. But now he'd made it to Eretz Yisrael. And the promise of the land and the promise of having children is now fulfilled. Vayomer lezaracha eten et haaretz hazot. Hashem reiterates the guarantee that you're going to have children, you're going to have Eretz Yisrael. And Avram Avinu is overwhelmed with hakaras hatov, with joy, and therefore he builds a mizbeach to Hashem, to thank Hashem for that joy. That's Rashi's interpretation. But the Ramban says that doesn't fit into the words as well, because the reason is given why he builds a mizbeach in the pasuk. Vayiven sham mizbeach laHashem hanireh elav. The real reason, says the Ramban, and the Orach Chaim HaKadosh follows in that way, that Avram, as he was then known, builds the mizbeach wasn't because of the promise of children. It wasn't because of the promise of the land, but this is the first time that Hashem openly revealed himself to Avram. Because when he was in Haran, Vayomer Hashem al Avram Lech Lcha, he spoke to him. Avram heard a voice, but he didn't have the experience of HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealing himself. But now, for the first time, the pasuk says, Vayira Hashem el Avram. So two things were happening. One is the promise of the children of the land, and the second is HaKadosh Baruch Hu opens the door and enters the room and sits down with Avram and reveals himself. Now, which is the bigger joy? Says the Ramban, the children, the land was secondary. The invitation to sit with Hashem, the presence of being in the Shekhinah of Hashem, that was the primary joy that Avram Avinu had. And you see that in the pasuk. Vayiven sham mizbeach laHashem hanireh elav. It doesn't say Vayiven sham mizbeach al ha-besorot hazera, al besorot haaretz. So how would Rashi answer that question? Well, Rashi would simply say that Vayiven sham mizbeach, the reason why he built it was because he heard about the children, about the land. Who did he build the mizbeach to? LaHashem, who just revealed himself to him. That's not the reason for the building of the mizbeach. I wanted to suggest a way of aligning the view of Rashi and the Ramban as one opinion altogether. You see, the experience of HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealing himself to you is one which in our world we don't have as openly as Avram Avinu had. How do we know that Hashem is with us? How do we feel Hashem? We feel it with Hashkacha Pratis. When we see the Yad of Hashem in our lives, and we see HaKadosh Baruch Hu coming towards us, finding favor with us, we see the Yad of Hashem in our eyes. Sometimes it's through the pain, through the difficulty. Sometimes it's through the joy, as Sinai Ha'arim, when things are going very well. But our way of experiencing Hashem is through the challenges and through the brachas that we have in our lives. So for us, the joy is more experiential when Hashem enables us to come back to the land, when Hashem grants us children, and then we're supposed to use that as a springboard and say, I'm appreciative of the children, and I'm thankful to you, Hashem. I'm appreciative of the land, and I'm thankful to you, Hashem. But what I'm most grateful for is that you use these as the means for me to feel you in my life. So Avram Avinu perhaps had both together. Of course he was happy about having children. Of course he was happy about having the land. That's the way Rashi explains it. That's why he built a mizbeach, to express his hakaras hatov to Hashem. But the most of all, what he was happy about was that was the means that Hashem was using in order to reveal himself and create a personal connection. Something that was very, very moving last week was Avraham Ochana, who was waiting for 2 years for his son Yosef Chaim to come back from Gaza. Yosef Chaim was kidnapped on Simchas Torah 2 years ago, and his fate was largely unknown for a long time. And then when Keith came back, who had been together with Yosef Chaim, he said he's alive and he's well, but he's still being held there. And then for another year plus, no one heard anything from him. And Avram was davening and davening and davening. Avram wasn't into political activism. He was into going to the kotel and going to tzaddikim for brachas. When finally, a week and a half ago, Yosef Chaim was released, then Avram came towards the room where he was, and he hadn't planned this. It wasn't something that he was conscientiously doing. But as he stood at the door and saw his son at the door, he shouted out, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And then he embraced his son, Yosef Chaim. So there's two things happening at the same time. The joy is the joy of his son who he didn't know if he would ever see alive again, who was alive and well, and he was able to embrace him. So the experiential joy was the re-embracing of his son coming back to the land, the Zera and the Haaretz, his son Yosef Chaim, the son coming back to Eretz Yisrael. That was the joy he was feeling. But the using that experience to recognize Hashem is with me, I'm experiencing Hashem in our lives. He was able to combine both the Perush of Rashi and the Perush of the Ramban and the Orach Chaim HaKadosh to use the experience of the joy that we have in our lives and recognize that's HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealing His Shekhinah. Have a wonderful Shabbos.